God's in his heaven. We're back at it again. Look at this, we got our facings attached. That's all arranged now. The lapels are kind of complete. Well, in a second anyway. Now, as established viewers will know, I have a little bit of a, shall we say, slippy history with lining fabric selection. I always tend to sort of just end up with fabrics that I'm actually not massively pleased about. But we'll see in this case. You can all take your votes. And, you know, worst case, it'll be on the inside, so no one's actually really going to see it much. A lot of you had very fun suggestions for lining fabric colours. As I'd said, I think I just wanted to go for a plain cotton to complement, I guess, heat-wise, texture-wise, the linen cotton blend here. And, you know, I'm still a little bit sheepish about trying to dive into any more sort of funky prints and whatnot. But yeah, we had some fun thoughts. We had like sort of orange tones. I think mint green came up a couple of times, you know, sort of like nice pastel-y mint green. And that was kind of what I was hoping to find. But none of them really had the appropriate shade. And I was kind of in a bit of a hurry, to be honest, because I wanted to get on with it. And so I landed on what I landed on, which I'll show you now. Well, here we have it, friends. Read it and weep. So this is, I guess, what you'd call burgundy, this sort of whiny without H, relatively natural-ish tone, although again, I don't really know what in the natural world would really correspond to this, but yeah, I'm not mad about it. And I know I said that last time, but I think this time it's even more the case. You know, yeah, I think it matches well enough, and it's at least not too ostentatious to, you know, if I really do decide that I'm not into it whatsoever, that at least I won't be thinking, oh God, every single time I open up that jacket or don't have it closed shut with a button, I'll just be conscious of this disgraceful abomination. But enough of these slanderous remarks about this poor darling fabric. Just gonna kind of work on the left front today, get my Barcelona pocket done, get the facing attached to the lining, and we'll see how we get on. Oh, before I do though, check out this goof. You may recall from the fitting last week that I wanted to scoop in the armhole a bit more, which I have done, and it's helped obviously free up the arm mechanism, if you like, itself. But I was quite conscious, as I think I may have whinged, about not wanting to scoop too far in because I didn't have a ton of chest ease to work with, and I'm afraid I might have overshot the mark slightly. And you know, obviously whatever I did on the one side, I had to make it match on the other side. So that's what I've done, and I think it's most telling here with the breastwelt pocket. So really the breastwelt pocket should not be any nearer than basically just under 4 centimeters away, or 1.5 inches from the stitch line of where the arm's gonna go basically, or where the sleeve's gonna go, which is about here. And I think I've now basically got just under 1 inch, or just over 1 inch, around 1 inch, let's say. So not ideal, but I checked it out still while it was still basted up after last week. And I think, you know, it's at least not the case that it's like really taut across my chest now. There's just about enough ease to make it work. And, you know, I personally am not too fussed about the aesthetics, if you like, or the appearance of this pocket being nearer maybe to the sleeve than it supposedly should be, but we'll see how it pans out, won't we? Somewhat insultingly, this fabric actually has a really luscious quality to it on the preview screen of my camera, much more so than in real life, that being, alas, the realm in which I'm gonna have to wear it. You know what, moratorium on nasty comments about my lining, I think. I don't know why I say that as if it's your fault. Ugh. So as you'll know if you watch the wedding suit series, my lining is just cut based off the actual garment panels itself, so I haven't got separate pattern pieces for the lining. And as you all know, also if you watch the wedding suit series, but as you may just know because it is true as a rule, the lining pieces are slightly bigger than the garment pieces because, you know, if they were identical, then there would just constantly be an excess of tension between the lining panels and the garment panels, and we don't want that. Things are going to then tear. I mean, there's extra bits in tactical places like around the sleeves and up here at the top, but overall there's about sort of 0.5 centimeter on each edge extra on the lining pieces versus the garment pieces. Okie dokie, now what am I doing here? Okay, and what I'm now doing is basically, at the top here there was about 5 centimeters of excess left in, and I'm putting in this little pleat here, and that's just going to allow a lot of whatever the opposite of lateral is, ease going up and down. I'm pretty sure I made the exact same lateral remark there actually when I did the wedding suit, but who cares? Can't plagiarise myself, can I? I will go and press this as well like a good boy. Yeah, obviously please do let me know what you think of my lining choice. I do hope one day as well to sort of transcend and get into, as it were, the more funkier linings of the world. Just gonna trim this a little bit here. You know, maybe the occasional print, the occasional pattern. I did actually see one rather adorable in one of the fabric shops near me, which is actually kind of a bit more catered towards, I think, you know, sewing things for children, but they often have a lot of really nice cottons. And there was this one, it had this mint green base, which was just the green I was looking for, but the print on it was this like huge daisy print situation. And I did think that could be actually quite adorable. And maybe next time I'll have the guts. So yeah, the Barcelona pocket, one of many pocket options that you could go for when doing your internal pocket, your sort of inside lining pocket or pockets. You can just do like a normal kind of piped welt pocket situation. But this one is not only more fun, I think, but also actually kind of easier, I'm not gonna lie. I find it really quite straightforward to make. There's no sort of weird unpleasant snippy bits that you get with like pipe pockets, and yeah, they just look very handsome. And again, this series of videos isn't really meant to be kind of educational in any way. unlike the wedding suit series. So if you do want to actually have a tutorial on how to make one of these pockets, you can find that here. Oh, I'm such an erratic sewer. Yeah, so I'm doing this thing of just basting shut the inner, what will become the pocket opening for now, and just tacking one at the ends to make sure that it stays nice and firm when I do open that up. See what I mean? Forthwith. All right, so these are my little pocketing bags, also outlining, and I'm just trimming these on a little 1.5 centimeter slant as well, because that's the same slant. Oh my goodness, am I? Try my best. Yeah, that's the same slant that the pocket is going to be on. It's kind of like with the breast welt pocket as well. You need to arrange everything on the slant so that once it's all set up in its final form within the jacket, within the lining, it'll fall perpendicular to the floor. Perpendicular to the floor? Yeah, perpendicular to the floor, parallel to the direction of gravity, if you like. So depending on how impatient you may or may not be with my blunt fabric shears, this may or may not come across as good news. We have a little bit of snipping to do. So this here is the pocket placement marking lines whatsoever. Whatever. Again, it's on this slight little slant that's going to be offset by the pocket bag eventually. You'll see what happens. Don't need to spoil it. Yeah, so just getting it arranged in this kind of crosswise fashion. It's not snip too far. And it does then get a little bit finicky because of just the lightness, basically, of the lining fabrics invariably. But I believe, if not in my own capabilities to execute this, then in your deserving it. So for your sake, if not my own, I'll give it my all. Okie dokie. How do you like that, eh? So there's those little corners folded under, hence the snipping, and this eventually is going to sort of slot in here. But why spoil it, eh? Yeah, this is one thing I do love about the cotton linings, is that they are just very manageable fabrics to play around with. For this step, I think with the last one I did, it was this sort of imitation, silky, viscosy situation. It was just very fiddly and not much fun. So now comes the rather fiddly part. Ooh, before top stitching this bad boy on. Yeah, obviously there is an endless array of pockets and pocket types, pocket amounts that you could put on the inside of your jacket. It's really entirely up to you. It's just funny really because, you know, for someone who spends so much time making suits, I actually almost never wear them. Although I guess that might change once I've built up a adequate supply. And yeah, you know, I'm not exactly a sort of international man of mystery. I don't really have the need for several hundred little internal funky purpose-built pockets. So I always tend to just do this one sort of notional pocket really. Oh, how are we going to do this? But maybe there is a sort of slightly more James Bondy future for me ahead. Although I hope not. That always looked like a lot of trouble. A lot of faff. A lot of unpleasantness involved. I don't think James Bond has much time to sew either, so alright, that should hold up nicely. Yeah, any fellow tailors out there, please let me know what your preferred inside pocket type is. And indeed everyone else. Which pocket type do you most enjoy making? Because a lot of them are a little bit headache inducing sometimes. You know, they have their moments. This one is definitely high up on my list of favorites. I just feel like it's a low risk, high reward. And it's just it's got that sort of niche fascination. Yeah, you really do have to take your time and take care with your top stitching here. Otherwise, it's all wasted effort really. Okay. Okay, yeah, well I started to feel that concentration was so paramount that I actually couldn't really do it on camera. So here we are with the semi-final result. Even then, it's not especially mind-bogglingly fantastic, but slightly neater than the last time. So that's all I can ask for really, isn't it? It is quite annoying having to hop constantly back on the machine though. After weeks and weeks of pure hand stitching, more or less. Now I love my machine. So that's caught the pocketing now on the other side. So I've got the first pocketing bag in place now. So that was attached like that. And as you can see now, accounting for these respective slants, they kind of cancel each other out and everything is now running, as I said, parallel to the direction of gravity. So, what am I doing? Got to do the other one now. Oh, it's always so hard to tell which edge is the one that you've trimmed the slant off. Okay, I guess it's that one. Maybe it's not that hard after all. Just closing up the pocket bag now, getting ready for the big reveal. Oh, I think that might be the machine done for the day. That'd be nice. Ugh. I've got to say, I'm glad that I've plunged into this suit project relatively quickly after the last one. I think normally there's a bit more of a break. But I can definitely feel, I guess, with that relatively quick turnaround, the sense of just already knowing better kind of what to do and not having to puzzle so much about every step before, you know, taking the plunge. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, yeah, because what this is now my fourth jacket, my third doing proper sort of canvassing. So yeah, shouldn't really be any excuses, should there? So now, yeah, just ripping open this seam now, which was only closed with essentially a very long basted stitch with the machine. Yes, so this is now the official pocket opening. And this again is what I like about this pocket, is it's just all basically just like normal top stitching. As I said, unlike a welt pocket or a, what's the other one, you know, a sort of jetted pocket, there's no sort of nerve-wracking snipping to do. I mean, there's some snipping, but it's just not very nerve-wracking. So yeah, anyway, there you go. There's your Barcelona pocket. Yeah, I tend to avoid button and button tab because I just don't really like the bulk. And also because I guess I was a bit lazy, but what are you gonna do? Sue me. Okay, silly me. we're not done with the machine because we've got to sew these together, don't we? But after that, it's all basting. Yeah, it can be a little bit mind-bending trying to get these edges to match up, but you just got to remember to ensure that you can see the relevant fringe of lining excess at the respective edge. So 5 centimeters hem allowance down here at the bottom, and then the 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters up at the top here. And just, yeah, try and make sure it's not stretching out either. That wouldn't be good. Although there will be a little bit of tugging and pulling because of the way these curves have to bend round. But don't worry, once it's stitched and folded back around the right way, all shall be well. All right, machine, fine. Here you come. Ooh. Yeah, I would be curious to know, well, 2 things basically. I guess from people who also have this kind of tailoring experience, or you know, hobby tailoring experience, whatever you want to call it. I mean, how many projects was it until you really felt like you kind of knew what you were doing? I always feel like I'm getting towards there, and obviously every time it's, you know, a little bit better. But yeah, whether it's you like making full suits or waistcoats, or maybe even kind of historical garments, or just trousers, just jackets, I don't know. What was the project basically? What was the point? How many reps did you have to get in before you really felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing from here? And again, never mind tailoring stuff. Perhaps you haven't attempted these kind of garments before, or you're not especially interested in making them yourself, and generally you're sewing different kinds of things. I mean, what was the project, or what was the point at which you felt, okay, I've broken through maybe this sort of beginner phase now, and I feel like, you know, if someone were to ask me, say, to teach them the ropes, I would be able to do so. You know, I think about this sort of a lot, especially with having made these videos, a lot of which have an implicit, if not explicit, tutorial angle. And at certain points I've thought, you know, it's a bit weird to feel like I am trying to basically educate anyone on anything to do with this stuff when I'm still learning myself. Although, you know, I do feel like that's a principle of learning, isn't it? You know, you don't have to just only learn from the absolute masters, the absolute experts of the field. You know, as long as you're learning from someone who is 1 or more steps ahead of you, then you're still going to make that same progress, hopefully. Curious to know what your experiences are with getting that feeling of, okay, I no longer feel sort of slightly panicked and disoriented by doing these things. I just think, oh yeah, it's that thing, I've got to do that now. This, that and t'other. Now she blows, ladies and gentlemen, now she blows. You know, now I see it like this, I do feel more at peace with the lining selection actually. It does seem to blend a bit more happily than I feared it might. And look at this, if it isn't a little bit of balance returning to the force, because we're basting, machine's away. Again, not that I have anything against our machine, and yeah, we're just getting everything locked down for the steps to come. Yeah, I do hope no one particularly minds the fact that I'm obviously glossing over a few steps this time around, because the time frame I have to make this suit, which is now needed in about a month's time, combined then, or compared then to the time I actually have available to do the sewing, compared then to the relative time it takes to film and whatnot, I just don't really have said time, unfortunately. But again, if you want to see the whole shebang, from start to finish, you can do that here. But I'll stop unnecessarily apologising for myself. I'm told it's one of my more annoying traits. I'm sorry. Yeah, one recurrent theme in the construction of this jacket is that anytime I have had to do, for instance, pad stitching or cross stitching, I've almost gone out of my way to, well, whether it's to do with cutting myself slack or not, I have cut myself some slack by just doing bigger stitches than last time. And I actually think though in this context it makes sense, because so here what I'm doing basically is just cross stitching the seam allowance of the facing and the lining into the canvas, and that's going to be a permanent stitch that's going to stay in the jacket, and that's just going to help fix basically the lining and facing edge to the canvas, just help make sure that it's not just a whole bunch of floating stuff between the, well yeah, basically between the jacket edge and back seam basically, just that there's a little bit more, you know, fixity. But then, you know, you don't want it to be so fixed, as with so many things with the canvas, you know, you want it to be fixed but free still in some way, you know, it's floating as they like to say. And I guess, at least this is what I'm telling myself, by taking a slightly more generous stitch here, I'm just allowing, you know, a bit more flexibility, because I guess if I was taking tiny stitches here and really pulling them tight, I would be really, really jamming home that seam and, you know, not really maybe leaving as much wiggle room as is healthy. But maybe I'm just making this up. Maybe this is just pure delusion, justifying oversight that has no justification. We'll see, won't we? I mean, wouldn't be the first time, would it? Yeah, now I have it before me. I should also remark, because I think I forgot in last week's video, which incidentally you can find here, that the absence of the collar linen panel that would otherwise, or can go across the top of the shoulder, seemed not to have caused any sort of collapsing effect, which I was happy to see, because it just, you know, proves, I guess, that if I so choose, if with a sort of lighter garment like this one, you know, a sort of summarier garment, I want to just take a chill pill with the padding of the chest, then I can do, and it's not going to have any dramatic structural implications. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this flannel actually in this roll. I think that's worked quite well too, which is good because I have tons of it left over. Yeah, and you would definitely want to take extra care, I think, when doing this stitch to ensure that they weren't coming through to the right side of the garment, because obviously if at the very end you're taking out all your basting and everything's closed up and you find that actually one stitch had come through and you need to snip it, then you would essentially have introduced a weak link in this chain of stitches that could only really be repaired if you then opened everything back up and redid it. So let's try and avoid that, shall we? Not that I was paying sufficient attention to be able to say for sure that I haven't done that, but we'll find out. Be careful not to sew this lovely coaster into my blazer. Oh, come on. Now with all my blathering about feeling as if I'd perhaps hit a certain baseline of proficiency with all this tailoring stuff, this is something that I'm definitely looking forward to upskilling out of, namely the blasted thread coming out of the blasted needle. Pardon my French. Oh, thank goodness. Well, this is somewhat macabre. I seem to have gotten some basting thread in the end of my coffee. The Italians, not only do they make the best food, but they also make the tastiest basting thread. Yep, and this too now, just one last sort of structural securingness, only on the pocketing side. So I guess any pockets that you have done on your front lining, you would do this if you can as well with the seam allowances of the pocket, just cross stitch them as well into the canvas only. So if you had another pocket down here, for instance, you know, you do the same thing, just any relevant edge basically. And yeah, almost done for today. Indeed, lunchtime is beckoning, and as I say, I think I'm going to have to do a bit more of this for homework for next week, as I've already done in the last week, because time really is of the essence now. And again, it was never my intention with this series anyhow to really show every step like last time. So I wonder where we'll end up next week. Could be that we're already onto the collar. Could be that we're already onto the sleeves. Can you imagine? The sleeves. Yeah, and then before you know it, it'll be trouser time and we'll be testing out my corrected pattern, about which I have good feelings. But of what worth, I ask you, are good feelings if you still have a massive wedgie? So we'll see. And if you fancy a little bit more, perhaps you haven't caught up on the last episode of the Summer Suit Diaries where I actually basted the jacket together and had a fitting. It was very exciting. But you can find that video here. Perhaps you're finding yourself in a little bit of a sewing lull at the moment and you're wondering how it is exactly you can get back on the horse. Allow me to offer you my 7 ideas for doing so, which you can find where my face is. Till then, thanks for watching and have yourself a merry little Christmas.